The next Lee and Ian podcast is approaching the station. Please step aside.
And welcome to the Lee and Ian Show. I'm Lee Navlin.
And I'm Ian Grodman.
The Lee and Ian Show is sponsored by Grodman Law and Mediation. Remember, when it comes to divorce, family first. Mediation is the way to go. Grodman Law and Mediation.
Thank you, Lee.
That's you, Ian.
That's me.
And by the way, Ian, when we're talking about us, okay?
The Lee and Ian Show.
Yes, I am excited to announce that the sequel to my book, Secretary of the City, is coming soon. Secretary Says
I can't wait.
Ian, it's a comedy novel that's fast-paced and full of intrigue. Pre-sale begins shortly, so stay tuned for more info.
And that's going to be on Amazon, right?
It's going to be on Amazon.
Anywhere else?
Where all good books are sold.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, for those who haven't read Lee's first book, I mean, it is just such a fun and entertaining read. You can sit down and probably read the whole thing in like 2 or 3 hours at the most.
Yeah, if you don't go to the bathroom or, you don't take any breaks.
That's it. And I tell Lee all the time, I think it'd make a great film
Or you can go to the bathroom, continue reading it,
There you go, sure.
Yes, bathroom.
We know people who spend that long there.
Yes, that's true. So,
Yes.
Ian, why don't you introduce our guest? We're
I
so
would be
excited.
happy
As my
to.
mother might say, let Ian do the talking. So why don't you introduce our guest?
Thank you, Mrs. Navlin. Well, it is my pleasure to welcome our guest here today, somebody who I've known a long time working in politics here in Essex County and in New Jersey. We're very happy to welcome Brendan Gill. Brendan has been a county commissioner here in Essex County for many, many years. I think Brendan has probably spent most of his adult life working in politics. He's worked for Senator Frank Lautenberg. He's worked for Senator Cory Booker. He's worked for Governor Phil Murphy. He works with Mikie Sherrill. He's worked with all of these people that we all know and love in New Jersey, and we're very, very honored to have him here with us today, particularly as he announced yesterday formally that he is running for Congress to fill the seat that is being vacated by Mikie Sherrill becoming governor. So welcome, Brendan.
Welcome, Brendan.
Thank you, Lena. Ian, thank you for having me. No, it's an honor to be here, honored to be in Maplewood, as always. You know, that's never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment in Soma.
In Soma,
the
as
little
they say.
Montclair. Right?
Exactly. No, I don't know. I think you guys are doing okay.
Okay.
So you represent all 22 towns of Essex
do.
County as a commissioner at large at Essex County.
Sure.
Would Maplewood and South Orange be at near the top of the list of communities that you're like, what happened there now? What's going on over there in Maplewood and South Orange?
So Lee, I'm born and raised in Montclair, and I still make my home there. So we got plenty of what's going on right now in Montclair. So
Montclair can hold a candle.
We can hold a candle. So I have a special place in my heart, of course, for the community of Montclair, but I also have a really, really special heart in my place for the communities of South Orange and Maplewood, because I went to Seton Hall University undergrad for college, and when I started my kind of volunteering my time in public service and in politics as a college student at Seton Hall, one of the first things that I was a part of was a volunteer for a congressional campaign. It was the late Bill Pascrell who I went on. He was the first. I'm associated with a lot of those people, Ian, that you mentioned, but the first person I ever volunteered for, campaign I ever worked on, was the late, great Bill Pascrell's campaign for Congress.
That's great.
And his district included
South Orange.
And
a little piece of Maplewood.
And Maplewood. Maplewood, little political trivia or history here, that Maplewood at the time was actually split 3 congressional districts, which was crazy. So it was the town was cut between 3. There were very few communities. There were communities that had 2, but very communities had 3. But we basically tried to claim the entire community, of course, for Bill Pascrell. But
everybody in Maplewood loved him.
Yeah, no, we and got to work on some great projects. But actually, so in terms of my elected office, I get to represent all the great communities. And one of the things I do love about South Orange and Maplewood is they have a very active constituency that's in tune with who their elected officials are. No matter whether they are county issues or not, you are going to hear from them, and they're going to reach out and see what you can do, whether it's something that directly affects the county or it's nationally or state, because they believe that their elected representatives should be responsive, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. So I actually love being able to interact with the constituents and my friends in South Orange and Maplewood, or SOMA as it's
Yes.
Wait,
Or
is it
some
SOMA?
people
Is it
say
SOMA?
MAPSO.
I was going to say, is it MAPSO when I'm
Yes.
in? Okay, I want to get myself.
I went by MAPSO for years,
MAPSO?
but I think I'm in the minority.
The Maplewood
Okay.
kids at Columbia High School say MAPSO.
But that's
MAPSO.
because I
South
was
Orange kids say SOMA.
because I was living in Maplewood,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
that's why I would
That's
go.
it.
I would lead off with who I
That's
was.
it.
But
Yeah.
Understood.
I
We'll
wanna
take
talk-
both of them.
Okay.
Brendan, want to talk about your
Yeah.
career and what you've
Yeah.
accomplished, what you're doing, and
Yeah.
because your resume reads like someone who should be in Congress.
That's right.
But this past weekend, close to 200 people are in front of your home in Montclair, where you were raised,
Yes.
your
Yeah.
childhood home.
Yeah.
Okay, for you to announce that you're running.
Yeah.
First off, I mean, you were playing ball there when you were a kid. You know,
Yeah.
the memories must have come flooding back to say, "Oh, wow! Now look what's going on now." I mean,
Yeah.
just talk a little bit about this past week and what that meant to you.
It was really important to, my parents still live there, so I should start there. This wasn't
Okay.
going back to
Neighbors with the people go, "What's going on outside?"
Yeah, so I'm very lucky. So my dad is a retired public school educator, the Montclair Public Schools, 53 plus years. 5 of us in that home, one bathroom. Shared a bunk bed with my brother. So a very middle class upbringing on a good day, as they say, for me, with the opportunity to go to a quality public school that helped get me into a university, to help me get into Seton Hall and allow me to build a career doing something that I love each and every day. And the reason I wanted to be in front of my parents' house for this announcement is that, I deeply believe that we're losing that promise, the promise of what we were able to do as a middle-class family here in this country, the ability to be able to age in place, the ability to be able to have quality public education, quality healthcare, quality childcare, infrastructure and transportation that works. I was the beneficiary of all those things.
Yeah.
And you just see it slipping away. I also have a 16 and a 13-year-old. I'm lucky to be able to make my home still in Montclair. But being in front of my parents' house doing that was really to, not only to highlight my roots in the community, but also to be able to say that, you can do a lot from this place, and we got to make sure we do what we can to protect that. Now, I'm not sure my dad enjoyed as much, and my mom and dad enjoyed as much of 100+ people, on our front lawn.
Right.
But I was honored to be able to do that, and I'm very lucky and blessed to be able to, be close to where my parents still are. My dad had a heavy influence on my entry into public service. So he's a very well-known educator in the community of Montclair, helped to lead the movement to integrate the Montclair public schools, and really
Was he teaching in high school?
he was a middle school teacher.
Okay,
and actually, it's a separate story. I'm lucky he's not running for Congress, because otherwise I'd be in big trouble. But he came to Montclair in about 1970, and 2 very quick stories that he told a lot at the kitchen table that helped formulate my worldview, which was that very house. It took him 14 banks before he was able to find someone who would give him a mortgage for that home. And the primary reason was that on each side of that home there was an African American family, or on one side of that home there was an African American family living, and the final that lived there. And the bank that eventually gave him the mortgage said to him, when he was really struggling, I mean, he had a letter. He always says, "I had a letter from the superintendent. I wanted to live in the town that I worked." Right. And the mortgage officer said, "Mr. Gill, you don't want to live in that house." And he said, "Listen, I'm going to sue you because I do want to live in this home, and this is the house I want." And he got that house. And as we grew up,
what year was this, by the way?
He probably came in 19. Let's see, I am. So he probably came 70.
Okay.
69 South. I'm trying to think. They moved in right before I was born, so they would have moved in 74, so maybe 73.
Yep.
In terms of the in that range.
Yeah, Banks just saying we're not
we're just so the town, even for, again, very integrated communities, but redlining of course exists, and very much so. And he used to it was a community bank. We'll leave the name of the bank out. It's no longer there anymore. That eventually gave him that mortgage, but he went each month many times in person to pay the mortgage to the person who told him, "You're not going to live there." And he showed up, and the reason that he did that was also to tell us, and sometimes he would take us. And he wanted he wanted us to know who we were as a
Yep.
family, and he wanted that individual to know
That's great.
that what he did. The second quick story I would tell you is that he also was part of the movement. The first school that he taught at, the school he ended up actually spending most of his, not his first, his second school, but the school he spent the bulk of his career at was Glenfield Middle School. And when he got there and arrived at Glenfield Middle School, was in the predominantly African American section of our community. Most of the materials and books were 20 to 25-year-old materials that were from the north and from the middle school that was in the north end of our community. And he was part of a group of leaders at that time. Montclair was under a court order, like very similar experiences that we've had in South Orange and Maplewood. Was under a court order to integrate their public schools, and he was part of the group of teachers and other community leaders who helped to create the magnet schools that exist in Montclair to this day.
Still,
which really make now Montclair is known as this progressive, the independent state, of the People's Republic and all this other kind of stuff, which is great and true. But it what really kind of led that foundation was, I believe, the creation of our magnet schools, and we had transportation and busing, which integrated our community in a way that many, even to this day, are not.
Well, that leads me to my question, because Maplewood and Montclair, South Orange, mirror communities in so many ways. What has changed the most in Montclair and Maplewood and South Orange from when you were a kid to what we're seeing today with these communities? You touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, I think I would just say, like, there's the issue of being middle class in these communities and being able to being able to be here. Like, can you afford to live here? Like, that's a big issue. I mean, it's great that our housing market in these communities are booming, but they have replaced longtime residents of these communities. They have replaced seniors who want to stay. They have not given the opportunity for a teacher. My mom was a homemaker. My dad, was a public school teacher who also had a couple other jobs. But the idea that you could have, I had a younger brother and younger sister, the idea that you could have a 5-person family and move into Montclair and buy a home when you were 24, 25 years old is almost next to it just doesn't exist. So like, that's the big difference. The big difference is, like, what can we do? And we're never going to get all the way back. I'm not under any false illusion, but we can still do, I think, a lot to protect the opportunities that these communities provided. And that's the big difference for me. And secondly, the civic discourse, like what we see, I believe, actually is like, unfortunately, I think what's happening on the national scale is permeating how we're dealing with one another, even at the local level. So you see, I think you see that, and I have an opportunity to get to a lot of local council meetings and Board of Ed meetings, and you see it. Even among communities that are identified as more monolithic, so to speak, in thought, or maybe there's ranges, but you see that we have really lost the art of being able to debate, to disagree with one another without immediately jumping to motivation or trying to tear down people personally, which is what listen, I'm only an announced candidate for 4 days, and like the stuff you wouldn't imagine, the stuff that I've heard already, right?
I'm sure.
And it's not about what my position is on Medicare for all. It's about something that some nonsense that quite frankly the voters don't care about. But I think that has changed a little bit. So there's been a lot of good changes, I think, in our communities. As somebody, I've seen both. Like I don't want this to be like, hey, back in my day, in the good old days, do I hate that Montclair and Bloomfield doesn't play anymore on Thanksgiving Day like I do, like for football, like it saddens me that game doesn't take place and we don't have 5,000 people. But I also know times have changed and things are different, and some of that we're not going to get back. But the core values that drove these communities, I think, are still really, really the same, and we can try to protect those to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I agree. I'm Essex County. I grew up in Livingston, Maplewood, and so I'm here basically my whole life. And I agree with you. The fabric has changed, the people have changed a little bit, but it's still it's a community that you want to live in, and and people who come here get very involved because they love it so much. And I think that's part of the reason why people are so loud and proud about their opinions. they want what's right for their community.
As a kid who grew up in the Bronx, right? Like, no disrespect to the Bronx, but like living in a town like Maplewood is just like an unbelievable dream for me. So I'm very lucky.
Yeah. My dad grew up in the Bronx, and I grew
Where?
Up,
I didn't know that. Do you know where?
Fordham.
That's where I grew up.
Yeah,
Fordham Road.
right. Yeah, you guys had the same accent. Same.
Well, you got to talk.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, you got to tell me more.
Yeah. But he always used to say when I was a kid, you don't know how lucky you are to be growing up here. That was every time I would do something stupid.
Yeah.
But
Understood.
But I tell you what, Brendan. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Washington, D.C. and with the shutdown. But my wife, I know, is going to vote for you, and she's going to vote for you because specifically you are a leading proponent of the Essex Hudson Greenway, which is the single largest conservation project in New Jersey's history. Talk about how awesome that is.
Say he's not a leading proponent. I think he is the leading proponent.
The leading proponent. Yes. So that's amazing. We love to hike. That's my wife's favorite thing. And this is, you are making this place greener and better. And talk a little bit about that.
So first of all, thank you. Tallied up one.
That's right. You got one vote.
There we go.
Hopefully I remember to vote for myself. We'll be on our way. So listen, I first of all, I thank you for that, and Ian, I thank you for that compliment. But it was started as called the Essex Hudson Greenway, now called the Greenway. What it very is quickly is a 9 mile long old freight rail line that we were able to convince the state of New Jersey after a decade of work to purchase to create a passive recreation trail. So I think of a rails to trail style project that starts in Montclair, goes through Glen Ridge, Bloomfield, Belleville, into Newark, crosses over into Kearny, and eventually ends in Jersey City, not too far from a PATH station. So the real vision here is a trail that could be used to bike, walk, ride. The idea that you could literally, first of all, get another component to have access to Manhattan. Like, let's just start there. But also, what I love so much about this project, and I should take a step back. When I first got elected to the Essex County Board of what was then called Freeholders, I was first we have 9-member board. 4 people represent the entire county and 5 represent districts. I actually started as a district, and my district was my hometown, Montclair, Bloomfield, Belleville, Nutley, and Glen Ridge. So the 5 towns that were in there. And I did a meeting within the first couple of weeks of being in office. And this is what I love about public service. And a group of activists came and said, listen, this rail line is defunct. The company will not sell it. We cannot get any traction on this project. They showed me the big picture vision, and I said, we got to do this. We can do this. And because of my work at the federal level with Senator Lautenberg and Congressman Pascrell and Congressman Rothman, I understood that. I understood the state politics. I understood the local politics. And we were able to literally build a movement. It took a decade. It took a decade to get us there. Wow. But eventually we got to the place where the state of New Jersey has now, it's no longer a question of if, it's just a question of when. The state of New Jersey has purchased the line. We broke ground not too long ago on the first mile that's being converted. And we are going to have what I believe New Jersey's version of the High Line right here in Essex County, and it's going to be in Hudson County too. But we're going to do a little home cooking here. It's going to be the Essex Hudson Greenway.
That's great.
But for those trying to envision it, it's the High Line.
It's the High Line.
That's
what we're looking at. We're looking at we're looking at the High Line. We're looking at there's multiple grade crossings. There's going to be welcome centers and activities along the route. So you could go for a quick run, you could go for a bike ride, you can do multiple things, and you can commute to work. Right. And you could also reverse commute. It allows people who like to come from New York sometimes to come to our communities. So it is it will be New Jersey's version of the High Line, and it's the first state park in a generation. And it is one of the things I really appreciate you didn't give me credit for that, but I was able to put my skill set, and I felt that was my job.
Yep.
I was able to put my skill set to work to do something that I think is going to improve and change the lives of New Jerseyans. So it supports public health. It also drives economic development.
Absolutely.
You can see just along that 9-mile route, Again, like where we have where we want to stabilize property values in some of those communities, it absolutely does that. And last but not least, it allows communities, and it goes to the first subject we were talking about, but it allows us to connect communities that aren't always connected.
Right.
Because you can grow up in Montclair and never step foot in the city of Newark, and you
Yeah.
can grow up in Newark and never step
Right.
foot in the
Yep.
in the township of Montclair. And I am on board with anything that deals with that issue,
Yep.
that forces New Jersey to. New Jersey is a highly segregated state
Mhm.
in many ways,
Yep.
and I am on board with any type of public policy that looks to address that issue head on, because
Mhm.
I am not afraid to some this leads to kind of some Washington stuff, but
Yeah.
like I'm not afraid to say that diversity is not a bad word.
It's a good word.
It's a good thing.
It's a good
Right?
word.
Like so
There are great communities in Orange and East Orange, and yeah, and sometimes people just step out of your comfort zone. And New Jersey's, like you said, diversity is a good thing.
Well, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right, has
Yeah.
taken a hit by people saying DEI, right? Like it's some boogeyman,
Right,
right?
right.
I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion, who's not for that? And
Yeah.
we need to talk about
It's
that
actually the
more.
greatest thing you can offer people.
That's
it's
right.
Like, hey, we can all get along and
That's
and
it.
live side by side. But talking about taking a little. No, you are the chair of Essex County's Anti-Gun Violence Committee. Okay,
I didn't know that.
that's a huge thing, which I know is people are hearing that and they're like, "Titching, you got their vote because of that." Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that was, really the formation of that committee, which I pushed as a legislator at the county level, was to see if we could do anything more to deal with the public health crisis of gun violence in our communities. We've seen the federal government fail us time and time again. I'm not giving up on that. I worked for I worked for Senator Frank Lautenberg. You wouldn't find a greater champion to fighting the public health crisis of gun violence than him. Domestic abusers no longer have access to weapons in the United States because of the work of the late great, Frank
Yeah.
Lautenberg. But the formation of this committee came through my work with other groups like Everytown, Moms Demand Action, my own personal experience with gun violence in Montclair, even at a very young age. We had a very well-known mass shooting at our post office. We had the loss of a secretary in the school that my dad worked in. I was in the high school at the time, but where the secretary was unfortunately murdered in a domestic abuse situation in the parking lot of the school. We've had a community. I represent the entire county. And we have a gun violence issue for sure, not only in our communities here in Essex County, but across this country. So one of the things I thought we could do was to formulate this committee. And what we had a hearing a few months ago where we heard from some of the leading experts on this topic, just to talk about, like, listen, what can we do at the local level? And one of the things that I'm really proud of is that we created an ordinance at the county level, which deals with people who we purchase firearms from. And they have to answer 7 very basic questions that basically tells us that they're doing everything they can to make sure that their guns are not being illegally traded across state lines, that they're the best possible corporate actors that they can be. It's a step that we can take and use that power of the purse, as long as I still think we need a federal solution.
Yes,
No,
absolutely.
I'm not, and we're lucky to live in a state that has some of the,
That's
thank
right.
you, Governor Murphy. Thank you, the late, I'm sorry, not late, but retired Senator Loretta Weinberg and others who worked on those issues over time. Bill Kastner, who chaired that committee for the governor. But we live in a state with strong gun laws that are on the books. And this was kind of my way to, to kind of say, hey, we need to do something locally when our federal officials are, or at least the federal government overall, is not doing what they need to
They're
do.
not at all. And, Brenda, I want to ask you too, for some of our listeners, if you can explain, like you referred to this as a public health crisis, right? And I think there are people here in Maplewood and South Orange and New Jersey, nationally who don't understand the public health crisis aspect of what you're talking about. If you can explain that to people, I think it's really important for people to understand that.
I mean, listen, I think the access is just too easy, right? I
Right.
mean, let's just start there. I mean, we don't have common sense, gun control laws on the books at the federal level. Basic background checks, simple,
background checks,
simple,
Yep.
background checks. It's harder to get on it's still to this day harder to get on a flight. If, by the way,
That's right.
when the planes are actually flying
Yes,
and the government is
we'll
open.
talk about that in a minute. Yes.
But it's harder to get on a flight, right?
Yep.
Than it is to purchase a weapon.
Yeah.
And there's no question that these weapons end up getting not only into the hands of folks who intend to do harm sometimes in our communities, but also into the hands of people who are going through maybe incredibly mental health challenges.
Yep.
And then you only have to look at the amount of school shootings, right? That's what I mean when I say it's a public health crisis.
The
because
leading cause of death for children.
there you go. I mean, it's almost insane to think to me that how immune we have become to when these things happen.
Yep.
Because you almost can't keep track.
You can't.
So that's what I mean when I say it's a public health crisis, meaning that it should, like you said, the leading cause of death. It should be treated. It literally should be looked at and treated like we deal with any disease. Although I don't know. Right now.
Well, that's true. That's true. Right.
I used to. There's a lot of things that I thought were like settled.
Measles done. Don't have to worry about it anymore.
The world is upside down.
Yeah,
maybe the United States anyway.
Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not settled issues.
Yep.
So that's the kind of work that I love to be able to do. So
not a fan of Bobby Kennedy. I think it's safe to.
You know what I'm going to say. There's a lot I disagree with him on, a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, right, you still have to now and then acknowledge he wouldn't have been my choice.
Yeah, right. A couple of the guys on the list I had.
But yeah, I mean, but I would just say, let me say this. But he's also pushed a conversation about processed foods. I'm not an expert. I'm probably the wrong person to ask about. I have a 16 and a 13-year-old who are doing their best to keep as much processed foods in our house, and I'm not helping them by any stretch. But he's pushed a conversation around that I think is an important one for us to have in this country. But there's a lot of other stuff that I would respectfully disagree with him on.
When Phil Murphy became governor in 2017, it was a shocking election for so many people, myself, because I never heard of the guy. I'm in New Jersey my whole life, never heard of the guy. And what a race. He wins 2 terms. You served as the architect of his historic 2017 election. Talk a little bit about that guy and how that happened. And I mean, again,
don't be too modest.
Don't be too modest, because this was, you're a guy that understands this state. Obviously, you got this guy elected. You helped get this guy elected.
I appreciate that, and I will. I appreciate not to be too modest. It actually reminds me of one other line that Senator Lautenberg used to use all the time. He said, "You know what they call a modest politician? A one-termer."
That's right.
So, no, and Phil Murphy was actually somebody that I had the opportunity. I probably was, so he wasn't new to New Jersey. He had served on a pension review committee, chaired it under Governor Cody, and which was really taking a hard look of, again, the ongoing issue of how we were going to be able to make that we maintained our commitment to our public employees, and at the same time, do our best to protect New Jersey taxpayers. And so he served there for a period of time. He was also active in partisan politics in the fundraising space. He was the finance chair for when I really first got exposed to him, he was the finance chair for the Democratic National Committee during the time that Howard Dean was the chair.
Okay.
So he was able to, again, to the extent I don't want to put anybody to sleep out there, some more history. But he was the chair, which meant that during the Hillary Obama primary, he was neutral because he was the chair of the DNC.
Okay.
And he was close to, he and Howard Dean had a relationship, and they were aligned on some of their political philosophies.
Yeah.
And he went on to chair. He went on to be very active raising money for Barack Obama in his first term, and he went on to serve as our U.S. ambassador to Germany.
Okay.
And one of the roles that I held during that time is I was the chief of staff here in New Jersey for Senator Lautenberg. And in the first term of the Obama administration, I got to be a part of screening and helping to prepare candidates who were from New Jersey for various federal appointments.
Very interesting.
So we had an opportunity to meet. Didn't have to get a chance to spend a lot of time, but
Right.
you know, he had a relationship there. When he entered, he went on to be that ambassador. Stayed the ambassadorship. I think he came back to New Jersey around 14-ish.
Yep.
And I had a chance to meet him, and you know, really like and spend a little bit more time with him. And it was really, to me, it was, you know, he was separated from the other candidates at the time where his stance on the issues. He was a huge proponent of public education. He was a huge proponent of finding pragmatic ways to fix our pension problem here in New Jersey. He was a huge pro-labor supporter, which was important to me, and I also supported. And I also thought, based on his experience as an investment banker and other roles that he held, that he had the economic development experience to manage New Jersey's economy. So all those things combined was how I ended up working with him. And my skill set at the time was very helpful because I was able to kind of help design. And I appreciate being labeled as the architect. I mean, I was definitely a big part of why he became the governor. And you know, he endorsed me actually yesterday.
So you got Murphy's endorsement.
So he
That's
did
great.
endorse me, and I
Excellent.
was very honored and humbled that he said
Sure.
in many ways that he would not be able to be there if not for the work that I did. And I was able to put that work together for him. So I actually went on to kind of design a lot of that strategy for his and be a part of executing it that helped him become the governor. And part of that strategy was before he was a formal candidate was to spend a lot of time through other vehicles doing issue-based work. So doing town hall meetings, doing telephone town halls, really kind of collecting ideas and doing what I would call thought leadership, so that we were building like a genesis, a policy-built genesis for his candidacy that matched where he was on the issues. And then also I was able, because of my past campaign work, to understand politically kind of how the state was structured, how it worked, and it helped him to navigate through that process. And in fact, and I apologize for the long-winded answer, but like one of the meetings that we did very early on in that time was we did a town hall meeting in South Orange actually, before he was an announced candidate, through an organization called New Direction New Jersey. And I knew we were onto something when we did that meeting, and I think we had 150 or 200 people just show up who just really were so had enough of the Christie years and had enough of the direction of the state, and were just mad and wanted platforms to talk about people who were discussing ideas of how we were going to fix this state. So I was lucky to be on the ground floor to put all those pieces together for him.
Sure.
And I just want to add to that, just to show how Brendan is willing to put in the work, right?
Yep.
So very early on in that campaign, when Phil Murphy was still somewhat unknown, like you're saying, Lee.
Yeah, he was unknown.
Well, I'm trying to be a little, diplomatic
it was dark.
here.
There was a lot of dark and lonely nights.
You had to really know him to know him.
That's right.
Exactly.
But Brendan and Phil Murphy actually went around. I don't know if you got to every municipality in the state of New Jersey, but I remember when Brendan and Phil Murphy came to meet with me and Victor Luca, who was the mayor at the time.
Yeah.
Talking about, why he was interested in doing this, wanting us to know who he was, why he wanted to do this. And they did that legwork all over the state, going to meet people who could provide some assistance if they felt good about them. And it was very impressive.
I appreciate that.
So moving forward, well, you'll run here for Congress. It's a crowded field so far.
Yeah.
Malinowski,
Yeah.
Bartlett,
Very crowded.
Croft, Dean Daffis is. but you've already got the governor's endorsement.
Yep.
So that's pretty damn impressive.
very impressive.
You know, the
Well,
fact that he
you know-
didn't. You know, I mean, he could have said, "Let me sit back and navigate this and see where." But no, he didn't waste
you
time.
know, I don't shy away from it. Listen, I appreciate that. We announced last Thursday with the support of over 60 local elected officials.
Tell people who some of them are.
You know, so endorsed by Senator John McKeon, State Senator John McKeon, State Senator Brittany Timberlake, State Senator Burgess, endorsed. By Assemblyman Mike and former Mayor of Bloomfield Mike Venezia, the Mayor of Bloomfield Jenny Mundell, the Mayor of Glenridge, the Mayor of North Caldwell, the Mayor of Roseland, the Mayor of Millburn, and I'm proud to have the endorsement of all. You know, there's not a lot sometimes we can get all 7 members of our local governing body in Montclair to agree on, and I respect each and every one of them. Proud to have the endorsement of our current mayor, Renee Baskerville, and all the members of our governing body, former Mayor Robert Jackson of Montclair. And we have quite a few. I've left out my colleagues on my commissioner board, Commissioner President Carlos Palmares, Len Luciano, Dorian Murray Thomas. So these are a lot of local elected officials and party leaders too as well. There's 14 towns in Essex County. And I'm proud to have 11 and a half, I think.
Okay,
11. We're getting there. 11 and a half of all 14. I'm working on one that's across the table from me right now.
That's it.
So we'll
we're talking.
But
Okay, all right.
we appreciate that. But I did want to say, Lee, I'm sorry.
Any luck, by the way, with Assemblywoman Gill? Okay,
so
you got her endorsement.
We did a big announcement, as I said yesterday. After that, and she was there. So I take that as a good sign.
She introduced him.
So
and that's Brendan's wife, by the way.
She's in the state assembly. But one thing I just wanted to say about that list was also had two things. You know, because he asked about the governor, and I was happy to have those endorsements. But really, but also, I'm sensitive to the idea that these things are not earned. That these things are anointed, and they're not. And one of the reasons that I think I received the level of support across this county is because of the work that we've been, I hope so, because it's because of the work that we've been doing. These are not, and I kind of hate this kind of stuff where we kind of try to tag people, with labels, so to speak. Because I think we're at a time where we all got to work together. So, and anybody that raises their hand to be a part of that, I'm on board with. But these are folks who deliver for their local communities each and every day. And I was, very, very much proud to have their endorsement. So it's also a grassroots and grass tops approach. 4 of the endorsements that I had yesterday, Leah, in front of my parents' house were from community members who lead some of our largest nonprofits in the area. They're not endorsing, again, I'm going to be clear, like their nonprofits cannot get involved in partisan politics, but to have Grammy Award-winning jazz artist Melissa Walker, who created, Jazz House Kids, who creates the Montclair Jazz Festival, which has a lot of participation, right, from Maplewood and South Orange, to have the endorsement of Deborah Kagan, who also serves as the executive director of the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition, who's working on those issues, who saw the work that I did on the Greenway, to have the support of Ann Marin, who runs Tony's Kitchen, which is the largest probably food pantry that serves our surrounding areas. And also I had the past president of our Montclair United Soccer Club, which again, they're not involved in partisan politics. What he talked about was the 16,000 families, and that I was the person that when they needed help for any type of governmental issue, whether it be just getting the field mowed to thinking more broadly about how they could better interact with the county and state agencies, that I was able to help with that. And I took a lot of pride in that, being able to hear those things said. And it's really a big part of, I think, who I am and what hopefully my candidacy is going to be all about.
Fantastic. The government shutdown, okay, it doesn't involve you yet. Hopefully, if and when you're elected, it's over.
Because there will be more shutdowns.
Right, there'll be more shutdowns.
Yes.
Get your whole thoughts on what's going on and why this happened and perhaps
Well-
what you might be saying on Capitol
Well,
Hill?
I
if you
would
were
say,
there?
I mean, I would have been pretty loud to not make that deal that was
Okay.
discussed. You know, I thought that that was the wrong strategy. I tend to believe that, you know, we had unification in our party, and we're not being given a fair deal to protect the people that
Not
we were
at all.
elected to represent. I don't think they did anything to solve the issues,
Nope.
anything that didn't put anything on the table to
No.
deal with the premium and healthcare challenge that is before us immediately. I mean, we're looking at, just to boil this down, right now in the county of Essex, we're probably looking at next year potentially, right, a 35% increase in our healthcare costs for our employees.
That's incredible.
I mean, 35%, right, for our 3,700 employees. I've been on this board for over a decade. We have a great county executive in Joe D.
Yes, we do.
And I'm proud to have the support of his chief of staff, Phil Elijah.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that they run a fiscally, as a legislator, I have budget oversight, but they run a fiscally sound government.
Absolutely.
And a fiscally sound government, we've never had to discuss layoffs in the decade that I've
Right.
been there. We've always have a rainy day fund because we make smart financial decisions. And for the first time ever, you know, hasn't been said, but it's like, is it going to be part of the discussion? Like what, like the cost will be astronomical
Right.
just for a government entity, not only talking about what it means to all of us as individuals. So my thoughts, were number one, I was not a big fan to see those 8 senators.
Yep.
I did not agree with that. I put out a statement on it. You know, you can check it out on X or on my social media platforms to, you know, very clear about where I was on that issue. And I think you may unfortunately see more of this because right now this is becoming unfortunately more of the norm than it should be. But hopefully, as we roll into 2026, we have an opportunity, one, to keep this seat in Democratic hands. But the second thing, in addition to that, is potentially have a Democratic majority, both in the House of
That's right.
Representatives and the Senate. And I think maybe that will change. I shouldn't say maybe. That will definitely
That
help
will.
us change
Yep.
the dynamic quite a bit. So,
when you Montclair Mayor Renee Baskerville, Baskerville,
Baskerville, yeah, Dr. Renee Baskerville.
Yeah, so
Yeah, first African American woman mayor in the history of the township of Montclair.
That's great.
So,
said a heck of a thing about you. I love the way she said what you know that Gill is running for Congress where he actually lives. Okay, so
Ouch.
there's been conversations. Some of your opponents.
I don't know.
Anyway, but you're a Montclair High School kid, Seton Hall University.
Yeah.
You've lived in
He's
Montclair.
lived in Montclair his entire
I
life.
mean,
Pretty
do you
much,
take that
yeah.
Is that a personal thing to you? Like, hey, you know what? Not, you know, this is where I'm from. This is my
You know,
community. This is
I
my.
mean,
what
you
are
know,
your thoughts on all that?
a Mountie born, Mountie bred, and when I die, I'll be a Mountie dead. But like, but you know, I think, you know, I do think what your record has been locally should inform the person that's in this position. We have a lot of great candidates who are running,
There are.
and I'm not. And this is this is my opinion. This is not a criticism of the work of any other candidate, but it really to me comes down to what do we need for you to be able to effectively serve. And there's no way you can tell me you can effectively serve a district, right? When you just haven't necessarily had the time, then that's not a criticism. It's just a fact.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. When you haven't had the time to be able to work on issues or build relationships with the people that are critical to you being effective in Washington, right? How that's not something that you can just like in a a quick couple of minutes
No, you're not gonna just pick it up.
figure out. So I think about that a lot. I think about it matters what your positions are on the earned income tax credit and tax fairness, and what we're going to do about healthcare and international affairs. All of that is super, super important, but none of that can be dealt with unless you understand the economic development issues on Springfield Avenue.
Right.
Unless you understand the flood mitigations and projects in South Orange and Maplewood and what they mean to the community. Because I've been doing this long enough to remember when just the redevelopment of the very block that we're on was a key part of the conversation,
Yep.
right, going on,
right.
That's
going
right.
on in Maplewood. And I believe that context is important. And I'm not saying that someone couldn't learn it or spend time to become more involved in it. I'm saying that like right now, I don't think we have time for that. Right? Like we need folks who can hit the ground running. And by the way, when we say hit the ground running, I don't think that hit the ground running based on your experience in Washington right now
Yeah.
is that valuable because it hasn't been working.
Right.
So I mean that the sense that we don't know what Washington D.C. is going to look like over the next 2 years.
That's right.
But we know we want certain people who have core values and understand our communities
Yep.
when whatever happens goes down.
It's funny you just mentioning Springfield Avenue. I just happened to be looking on Facebook, Reddit, and there was somebody was asking about the history of Springfield Avenue here because of the restaurants and so much of Newark Way. So much. If they sat with you, you could give them, you could spoon feed them the
That's
history of
right.
Springfield Avenue
That's
over the
right.
last 20 years, where it really has become a destination. So
It is a
that's-
destination.
So talk
It's a
about somebody from the community up, as opposed to like you said from Washington down.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't. Again, I think that's important. You know, what I mean, it's like I think understanding and saying that I've done a small business walk on this avenue before in my with my role at the county.
Yeah.
I've worked with our Office of Small Business Development, right, to help some of these businesses develop. I've been before your town council to garner support.
Right.
Something just as simple as like we move our commissioner meetings, our freeholder, now commissioner meetings around the county, and we go to municipal buildings, right? And something as simple as just doing the meeting, right, in Maplewood Town Hall,
Yep.
like gives you a certain experience and flavor for a community that should inform the work that you're going to do. So I don't, again, I don't say there's no perfect way to do this. I just do think like politics and many times is to me about what is the right skill set that we need at this particular time, right? And I think more so than ever, being firmly planted, in the district that you're seeking to represent. And again, I want to be clear. I think everyone should have the right to run, and I'm not questioning anyone's decision to run. I'm just saying for me, as a candidate, I think that hopefully folks, when they view my candidacy, will see it as an added bonus, that I've been here, that I've delivered, and that they can count on me. And with the event that you saw yesterday, was not an event I hope that could be put together in a few weeks, with folks just because they had heard or saw millions of dollars in television ads that were spent. Like it was because they knew me.
Yeah, these
Right.
are friends and neighbors and
and-
people that have seen your career blossom,
Yeah.
and they want
who've
to
known you your
continue to
whole
support
life.
that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think they wanted to support that. And I'm lucky. Like I said, I was listening. It poured. So so I know in certain traditions and cultures, if a lot of rain was a good thing, then we had that in
There you
spades,
go.
and then we're in good shape. But I actually. I was one of the things that I really really enjoyed yesterday was I was joined by 8 not all but 8 kind of people that are part of my crew that I grew up with and who I've been friends with since I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and we've stayed in touch. And that's the other thing that I think separates the communities in Maplewood, South Orange, and even in this district. Like you've got a lot of communities here where people, whether they left or not, they still have connective tissue.
Yeah.
And I had like 10 of those folks with me yesterday.
That's amazing.
3 or 4 of them who literally I've known since I was 5 years
Good
old.
for you.
And I'm proud of that.
Yeah,
And I
you
think
should be.
I think that means something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When you're a lifer in a community, you bet your buddies from when you're 5. So I've still got friends of mine 5, 6, 7, and I've not talked to them for 2 years on the phone. 5 seconds into the conversation, we're all caught up.
Yeah,
Right.
You know them; they know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah, no, it matters. And again, like my own. We talked a little bit about my own wife. I mean, we're both public servants. She's the first Colombian American to serve in the New Jersey State Legislature. But and her experience was different. I mean, she had an immigrant experience.
Yeah.
Didn't come to the States until she was 14 years old. Family separation.
Oh, wow.
Family separation is a real issue.
Yep.
She understands that these are not abstract. That's the other reason I'm running. I come from a biracial family, and right now, my kids are more Latino than they are anything else. I mean, we can start and end there. So sorry to all all the Irish lineage on there over there, but the reason I highlight that is to say that like they're picking up people in our communities that look like my family,
Yep.
right? This is not.
Ian has the same. His son
son,
Carlos.
Your son Carlos. That's right.
Ian's told me how he has to basically, and even though he's in college, he still got to explain it. Make sure you have your documents.
You've got your U.S. passport card on you at all times.
So it's similar for you. You have to have a conversation.
Yeah, and I also highlighted to say that like Alexson is not born and raised in Montclair, so you can come to a community, you can settle down, and you can continue to serve it, right?
Yeah.
And she's lived all over. My career in life took me in a way that I stayed, more local. She's lived in other parts of the world. Before we got married, actually enjoys making fun of me for living in the same town
She wanted to see the world without you.
Exactly that I grew up in. And to the point sometimes she goes, I know Essex County, I've heard it, and I've heard it enough already.
She's become a Jersey girl.
Yeah, she's become a Jersey girl in that way. She gets it. But also, I would say that also even doing that, even her own entry into public service, there was some work there locally done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage anyone who's seeking to run for office or wants to run for office. I have no problem with running for whatever you think you should be, but sometimes it's if you're looking for that angle to run for something, so to speak, or to serve. Like sometimes it's also important to look at what's in front of you,
right?
Rather than necessarily where you think you should be. I have no problem if anybody thinks they should be a member of Congress, excuse me, and that's where they should start. But I do think you have to understand that I would hope and think that the electorate's probably going to look to be a little bit to say, hey, what have you done up to this point?
Right.
Awesome.
It's very important.
Brendan, we only have a few more minutes. What happened this past week, Ian? Maybe the question for both of you. Mikie Sherrill, I thought it was going to be like very close race. Maybe all that rain that was coming down on you was
slaughtered him.
Yeah, maybe that was the tears from the Republicans. I mean, because what your thoughts on the Mikie Sherrill trouncing and what that means for the state?
So, first of all, I was thrilled to see those numbers. I was not surprised that she won.
Right.
I never thought that she was going to lose that race. The race was similar to the primary. She was had a stable, not large, but no matter what public poll you were looking at, no matter what information I saw, you could kind of carve it up and say, oh, well, the poll wasn't right, the modeling, you can get into the nitty gritty of the analytics. But and sometimes in politics, I'm a big Mets fan, right? So we went by the analytics, right?
Yeah.
The Mets would have won the World Series, right? So
with that lineup, with that right fielder,
right? Exactly, right? So the analytics can tell you a lot, but they don't always tell you who's going to win, right? So there's also the eye test, right? And
the heart,
and the heart, and what you bring to that race. So she ran a masterful campaign. From a message standpoint, for sure, and there's also no question that and this takes nothing away from the strength of her as a candidate, because she is a dynamic candidate.
Yep.
She is an unbelievable background and record, as we all know, and she just radiates competence, leadership, and capability. And we're lucky.
Radical competence. Yeah, right? That's what she's been talking about.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think. I think Phil had that. Governor Murphy had that, and I think she's going to carry on, that same style. But to the campaign itself, she also was helped, by an opponent who literally said he could not find one thing that he disagreed with the president of the United States on.
A+.
A+. He gave an A+, and
that was a bad answer.
That was a bad answer, right. And also, also to me was not who he was, meaning that he. He had presented himself as a more moderate Republican in prior elections. Right. He was also I served. He was for a period of time. He was a county commissioner, a county freeholder, and he'd served at multiple levels of government. But And I will say this: I take nothing away from the amount of policy proposals that he tried to pump out of his campaign. But if you cannot say to the people of New Jersey, when the president of the United States, and by the way, I don't care who the president of the United States is, but when they say, "Hey, we're canceling the Gateway Rail Tunnel project," right? A $12 billion public works project and investment into our region, anywhere from, I guess, you can see numbers that range up to 400,000 people that it affects in our entire region. That drives economic development in
that's
places.
not a luxury, that train line. That's a necessity.
That's a necessity. That's a necessity. And this guy said that it wasn't a New Jersey
Right. It's
project,
not a New Jersey
and it was
problem.
not a New Jersey project. And what concerns me long term for the health of our democracy, and this is why I'm running. This is going to be more affect, I think, our kids, more than anything else, or that next generation. Is that when people who have the opportunity to serve in these positions start making decisions that pledge allegiance to individuals over the people that they are supposed to represent,
That's right.
we have a big problem, and that's happening. That's not new, by the way. Like I don't think Trump is the root cause. He is a outgrowth of some things that have been happening for a long time. I can tell you, as a person who's been involved in public service, that some of this stuff has been going on for a while, but that also contributed, I think, to the margins that you saw, because our base was motivated, and also unaffiliated voters in this state who probably don't identify as partisan, so to speak, soundly rejected that type of chaos. Number one, and number two, I think also Governor-elect Sherrill did a great job saying, listen, if we don't deal with the issue of affordability, right? Like it doesn't matter that I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but it is not as important if democracy is under attack. If you can't pay your rent, you don't have you don't have a place to get goods. Like all these things that are your day-to-day life, right? Like how can you even get to those issues if we can't deliver for New Jersey residents? And I get that, I relate to that. That's why I did that announcement in front of my parents' home to say that, like, hey, like, I know what that's about. Like, when I go to Washington, like, again, it's not an abstract issue. I know what it is to be the child of a middle-class family that needed those supports in order to be able to have some of the success that I've had in my own professional career. So that's really what it's all about for me. So I was thrilled. So very, very long-winded. Gotta be careful. You give me the mic here. I could go on for a while about this. I love being have the opportunity to talk about it.
We're all very excited about Mikie Sherrill. So Ian, we had just a couple minutes left. Ian, anything you want to add to the conversation before we?
No, I just I appreciate what you just said about what's going on in Washington. I think that's important. We did want to get to that today. We really appreciate you coming here today and filling us in on your background, what you want to do going forward, your campaign. It's really been great. And, we'll get a bunch of people on Maplewood and South Orange listening. So
that's great.
Yeah.
As far as a
Mapso.
Grodman,
Mapso,
there we go. Yeah.
As far as a Grodman endorsement is concerned, I ran for
There's
Maplewood
no
Township
endorsement
Committee
at this point.
many years ago, and he did not endorse me. So,
But
he did a podcast with me. So,
I think you got the better end of that deal.
Yeah, you know what? I think so too.
I think you definitely got. I think you definitely got the better.
But don't forget how much I did help you, right?
Yes, yeah, he did. He gave me a lot of good advice. On how to lose. But no, I joke.
No.
But we actually it was through that. That's where I met Ian. That's through that process where we became pals for life. So
I'm gonna put in. I love that, and you said something in the beginning about your book, and if you wouldn't mind, I'm gonna put in a plug. I talked about my dad before.
Yeah,
he just had a children's book published.
Great.
Oh, awesome!
Called No More Chairs. I will. I'm gonna. I think if I could take some personal courtesy, I would love to get him on your show because I think he would love the opportunity to talk about his own experience, because I like to talk about it, but I think it would be even better for him to talk about it. And
No More Chairs, and your dad's full name?
Dan Gill. The book is Dan Gill. No More Chairs. The book, very briefly, it's a children's book about his own personal experience as a child. He went to it's a story, it's a birthday story, a story that he would use as a teaching tool on Martin Luther King Day. And a very short version of the story is that he also grew up in New York. So another New Yorker that who came to Essex County. He was about 9 or 10 years old. He went to a birthday party with his best friend, and in the city. Dad was white, Archie was black. They went to the door, and the woman for the birthday party, whose birthday party it was, the family answered the door and said, "Danny, you can come in, but I'm sorry, Archie, there's no more chairs." And they went back and forth. Where my dad's and Archie said, "Well, we know you have plenty of chairs," and then my dad said, "Well, there's plenty of chairs in my apartment, and I can get some chairs." And she continually said, "No, sorry, you just don't understand, Danny. There are no more chairs." So they go back. They realized what was happening. They go back to, I believe, Archie's apartment. I can't remember if it was Archie or Dad's apartment, but they go back to their apartment. They basically realize, what happened, and it was kind of the first, wake up to what was going on. But it was at that time that I think my own dad decided that whatever he was going to do, and I talk about this in my campaign launch video. Whatever he was going to do, he was always going to make sure that there was always going to be room and a chair for anyone who needed it or wanted it. And for 53 years, he kept an empty chair in his classroom in memory and honor of Archie.
That's
so it's a children's
story.
book that's out now. It's published. It's the story has received some national attention.
Beautiful.
And but I think just to if you're ever interested in a good guest who could talk
We'd
about
love
that
to
own
have him.
experience,
Yeah, no,
and
we could make that happen.
he probably would be willing to do that.
And
so
I'll tell you also, so in Maplewood, we have one of our Democratic Party district leaders who grew up in Montclair with Brendan, and is a friend of Brendan's, Rick Greenberg.
That's right.
Said that Brendan's dad was the best teacher he ever had.
All right.
So,
So
yeah.
he'll take it.
Yeah.
He must be real proud of everything you've accomplished in your career and continue to accomplish.
I appreciate that. He's very proud. I will just say that I was not the best student. So the lessons might have took a little bit longer for me to set in, but
you ended up pretty well, Brendan.
We did okay.
Yeah.
Like Ian likes to tell his kids, ABC, you're in the top 3.
There you go. That's it. Yep.
All right, so
appreciate it.
Ian,
Thank
I
you so
guess we're
much.
going to
I
call it a
think
night.
that's it. Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
So
Brendan, thank you.
Yeah, Brendan Gill,
thank you.
Ian
We
Grodman,
wish you the best of
Lee
luck.
Navlin.
Thank
Okay,
you.
you guys got to get out there and vote. We don't. By the way, we don't know when this election is.
We still don't
so we
know.
hope to be able to be back. When we know and we're a little
Yep.
closer. And,
Yep.
All right, the
we don't know what
governor's
it's
got to
gonna
make
be.
that a decision.
The
and,
governor will be announcing that.
All
Yeah.
right, so until we figure that out, Ian, until we do this again.
Sounds good.
All right, good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
Take care, everyone.